Maria stood in the long line at the airport, clutching her ticket tightly in her hand. The shiny ticket said, First Class, Seat 2A. She had never flown first class before. This was a special gift from her professor Michelle, who had been like a second mother to her during her years at Howard University. Maria had worked very hard and just graduated at the top of her class. Now she was flying across the country for a big job interview that could change her life. Maria looked around the busy airport, watching people rush by. Some looked tired, some excited, and others were on their phones or reading books. But Maria felt something different inside her, a mix of hope and nervousness. She was proud of herself, but she also felt a little out of place. She had never been in such a fancy place before, and she wondered if she really belonged there. As she finally got to the counter, the airline staff smiled at her. "Welcome! Do you have your ticket ready?" the woman asked kindly. Maria showed her the ticket and the woman quickly scanned it. "You're all set. Your flight board's soon. Have a nice trip." Maria smiled back. She took a deep breath and walked toward the gate. When the announcement came to board, she felt her heart beat faster. This was the moment. On the plane, Maria carried her small bag and looked for seat 2A. When she found it, she was amazed. The seat was large, soft, and had a lot of space. She gently sat down and buckled her seatbelt. Around her, people were chatting quietly or reading magazines. The flight attendant smiled and walked up and down the aisle. Maria felt proud. She thought about how far she had come. She remembered the long night studying, the support from her family, and the encouragement from Professor Michelle. All those moments had led her here. Suddenly, a flight attendant stopped in front of her. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said politely but with a slight hesitation. "Are you sure this is your seat?" Maria looked up, surprised. "Yes, it says 2A on my ticket." The flight attendant nodded slowly but didn't sit down. Instead, she went to talk to another crew member quietly. Maria felt a little nervous. Why was she being questioned? She looked around. Some passengers glanced at her, some looked away quickly. She tried to keep calm. A few minutes later, the flight attendant returned with a man. He was wearing a neat suit and looked serious. "This is my seat," the man said as he looked directly at Maria. Maria's heart sank. She shook her head. "No, sir. My ticket says 2A. I bought this ticket first." The man frowned but didn't say anything more. The flight attendant looked uncomfortable. Maria wished she could disappear. She wanted to tell them she had worked hard for this moment. She wanted to say she deserved to be here, but all she could do was stay quiet. The flight attendant asked Maria to wait while they checked the tickets again. Maria nodded and stayed in her seat, feeling the weight of every gaze in the cabin. She remembered her mother's words before she left for the airport. "Be strong, Maria. Never forget who you are. You belong everywhere you want to be." The minutes felt like hours. Maria tried to stay calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She looked out the window at the clouds, trying to imagine herself flying high and far away from all the worries. Suddenly, the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are waiting for final clearance from the gate before takeoff." Maria's eyes flicked back to the flight attendant. She seemed to be whispering urgently on her phone. Then the gate agent came on the intercom. "We have an issue with seat assignments. We ask for your patience." Maria felt her chest tighten. What could this issue be? The man who claimed seat 2A was now standing near the front of the cabin, speaking quietly with the crew. Maria looked around. Some people were whispering to each other. Others were watching her with confused eyes. She wished someone would speak up for her, but the silence was heavy. After a few more minutes, the flight attendant came back and said, "Ma'am, could you please come with me to the gate? We need to check your ticket again." Maria stood slowly, her heart pounding. She grabbed her bag and followed her out of the plane. As she stepped back into the busy gate area, she felt alone and small. No one else was being asked to leave. No one else was being questioned like this. The airline staff led her to a quiet corner and asked to see her ticket and ID again. While they typed on the computer, Maria took deep breaths and tried to calm herself. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" she asked softly. The agent looked up but did not answer. Then she said, "There seems to be a duplicate seat assignment. We are trying to fix it." Maria's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked hard to stop them. She thought about everything she had done to get here. After some minutes, the agent looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry for the wait. Please wait here while we sort this out. Maria nodded, though her heart was breaking. She sat down on a bench near the gate and pulled out her phone. She sent a quick message to Professor Michelle. They asked me to leave the plane. They say there is a problem with my seat. I don't understand. While waiting, Maria watched the plane through the big windows. The people she had left behind were boarding other passengers. The man who claimed her seat was now sitting calmly, as if nothing had happened. The announcement came again. We apologize for the delay. We are working to resolve the issue. Maria wiped a tear from her cheek. She felt tired but also angry. Why was this happening to her? She had a right to be on that plane. She had earned that seat. She thought about her family. Her father worked 2 jobs to pay for her school. Her mother had always told her to be proud of who she was. No one can take your dreams away if you hold on tight, her mother had said. Maria closed her eyes and imagined her grandmother, who had never gone to college but always told stories about hard work and hope. Suddenly, a voice near her broke the silence. A woman sitting on the next bench said quietly, "You shouldn't be treated like this." Maria looked up, surprised. The woman smiled gently. "I know what it feels like to be doubted. You have every right to be on that plane." Maria smiled back, grateful for the kindness. At that moment, the gate agent returned with an older woman, who introduced herself as a supervisor. "We will recheck the ticket and fix this soon," she said. Maria nodded, but inside she felt worried. What if the mistake was not fixed? As she waited, she thought about the flight. How many times had she dreamed of this trip? How many hours had she spent preparing for the interview waiting for her at the other side? Her heart whispered a promise: I will not give up. I will keep my seat. Maria sat quietly in the small waiting area just outside the airplane gate. Her hands rested lightly on her small bag, but inside, her heart was racing faster than the plane engines she had hoped to hear starting soon. She tried to stay calm, but every passing minute seemed to stretch longer and longer, like time itself was slowing down just for her. The bright airport lights reflected softly on the shiny floor, but to Maria the place felt cold, distant, and full of silence. A few people passed by, some glancing her way, others pretending not to notice. None spoke to her, and the quiet looked like a heavy curtain she couldn't lift. Her mind raced, filled with questions she couldn't answer. Why was she asked to leave? What was wrong with her ticket? Why was the man who claimed her seat already back on the plane as if nothing had happened? Maria looked down at her hands and noticed they were trembling slightly. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her mother's words. Be strong. Hold your head high. She reached for her phone and typed a message to her professor, Michelle. I'm still here. They haven't told me what's going on. Please help me. Before she could press send, her phone buzzed. It was Michelle replying quickly. I'm calling now. Stay calm, Maria. We will figure this out. Maria smiled faintly and hit the call button. When Michelle's voice came through the speaker, it was steady and strong. Maria, I'm so sorry you're going through this, Michelle said softly. I'm going to talk to the airline. You don't have to be alone. Maria's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. Thank you, Professor. I just want to get back on the plane. I know. Hold on for me, okay? They talked quietly for a few minutes, and then Michelle said, I'm here now. I'm with the airline. They're trying to fix the mistake. Just stay where you are. Maria nodded even though Michelle couldn't see her. She looked up and noticed a few other people nearby who had stopped to watch her. Some faces were curious, some confused. She wondered what they were thinking. A mother with 2 young children smiled kindly at her. The children waved at Maria and she waved back. It was a small moment of warmth in an otherwise cold and strange place. After about 20 minutes, a man approached Maria. He was wearing a suit and a name badge that said supervisor. His face was calm but serious. Maria? He asked gently. She stood up quickly. Yes, that's me. I'm James. I'm here to help, he said kindly. I want to explain what happened. Maria listened carefully as James spoke. There was a technical error in the computer system. It showed 2 tickets for seat 2A, yours and another passenger's. The other ticket was purchased after yours, but somehow the system assigned the seat to him first. Maria's heart still felt heavy. So why was I asked to leave? James sighed. That was a mistake. Our staff followed the wrong instructions, and I'm very sorry. Maria nodded slowly, but still felt a sharp sting inside. I just want to go back to my seat. James smiled gently. I understand. I've already arranged for you to board immediately. Your seat is yours. We will fix this. Maria felt a small wave of relief but also exhaustion. She thanked James and waited for the gate to reopen. Back inside the plane, the cabin was quiet but tense. The man who had claimed her seat sat nearby but avoided looking at her. Maria took a deep breath and stepped back onto the plane. As she passed through the first-class cabin, she noticed a few passengers looking at her with different expressions. Some smiled, some avoided eye contact, and a few whispered quietly. Maria found her seat 2A and sat down slowly. The soft leather felt familiar now, but the moment was heavier than before. She buckled her seatbelt and looked out the window. The plane was still on the ground, engines humming softly. Outside, the sky was a clear blue and the sun shone warmly. Maria wished she could feel that warmth inside her. Suddenly, a woman from the row behind leaned forward and said quietly, "I'm sorry that happened to you." Maria turned to see a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Thank you," Maria said softly. Another passenger, an older man across the aisle, smiled and added, "That was not fair." "You belong here." Maria felt her heart swell. For the first time since the incident started, she felt less alone. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, serving drinks and snacks. One of them stopped by Maria's seat and said, "If you need anything, just let me know." Maria nodded, still quiet. She looked around the cabin and saw that the atmosphere had changed. People were watching her, not with suspicion, but with respect. The man who had claimed her seat earlier was now sitting a few rows away. Looking out the window, the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We will be taking off shortly." Maria looked out the window again. The clouds were soft and white, floating gently in the blue sky. She thought about her journey so far, the long hours of study, the late nights, the hopes and dreams she carried with her, and she thought about the people who had stood by her, like Michelle, her family, and now these strangers showing small kindnesses. The plane began to move slowly, rolling toward the runway. Maria felt a strange mixture of relief and hope. As the plane lifted off, she closed her eyes and whispered a promise to herself. "I will not let this stop me. I will reach my dreams." The flight was smooth and the sun outside was warm. Maria's heart felt lighter with every mile. Though the day had started with a challenge, Maria knew this was just the beginning of her story. She was ready for whatever came next. The plane was finally in the air, cutting smoothly through the clear blue sky. Maria sat quietly in her seat, looking out the window at the clouds drifting beneath her. The soft hum of the engines filled the cabin, and the warm sunlight spilled over her hands resting on the armrest. Despite the comfort and the beauty outside, Maria's mind was busy. She thought about everything that had happened since she arrived at the airport that morning. The excitement of finally getting a first-class ticket. The shock when she was asked to leave. The kindness of strangers who had spoken to her. And the long wait before the airline fixed the mistake. Her heart still felt heavy, even though she was back in her seat. The feeling of being questioned and doubted stayed with her like a shadow. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She told herself, "This is my journey. I earned this. I belong here." Around her, passengers were settling in for the flight. Some were reading, some were watching movies on their screens, and some were quietly talking with the person next to them. Maria noticed the man who had earlier claimed her seat was now sitting a few rows back. He avoided looking at her, keeping his gaze fixed on the magazine in his hands. Maria wondered if he felt guilty or simply wanted to forget the whole thing. Suddenly, the captain's voice came over the intercom again, but this time it was not the usual cheerful announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small issue to address before we can continue our flight. I ask for your patience and understanding." Maria's heart tightened. She looked around and saw others whispering and exchanging worried looks. The plane had been moving smoothly, but now it seemed something was wrong. The flight attendants moved quickly, speaking in low voices with the crew in the cabin. The mood was changing. Maria stayed calm but curious. She noticed a few passengers in the back beginning to ask questions. "Why aren't we flying?" A man in a blue shirt asked the flight attendant. "We're waiting for clearance from the airport," she replied quietly. A woman near the window sighed. "I hope it's nothing serious." Maria thought about the job interview waiting for her in California. She needed to get there on time. The delay worried her. As time passed, the plane stayed in place on the runway. Outside, ground vehicles moved around the plane. Maria watched through the window as workers talked and checked the airplane. She wondered what could be causing the delay. Her mind returned to the earlier confusion about the seat assignment. She hoped the airline was fixing all their mistakes so the flight could continue safely. Suddenly, a voice from the back of the plane broke the silence. Why was a passenger asked to leave the plane? I heard something about it before we took off. Maria looked up, surprised. A middle-aged woman stood up, her voice calm but strong. She spoke loud enough for others nearby to hear. The flight attendant turned and replied, "There was a mix-up with a seat assignment, ma'am. It was quickly corrected and the passenger is now back on board." The woman looked around the cabin and said, "That doesn't seem fair. Everyone should be treated with respect." Maria's heart beat faster. She felt a small surge of hope. Maybe people were beginning to notice. Maybe they cared. A few passengers nodded quietly in agreement. Some glanced toward Maria with new understanding. The woman sat down again and the cabin grew quiet. But the energy had shifted. The captain's voice returned. "We are still working to resolve a technical problem and it may take some time. We apologize for the inconvenience." Maria closed her eyes briefly and whispered a quiet prayer for patience. Minutes passed like hours. The passengers grew restless. Some checked their phones. Others looked around, talking quietly. Maria sat still, thinking about the challenges she had already faced. She knew this delay was testing her strength, but she was determined not to let it break her spirit. Near her seat, the flight attendant came over with a warm smile. "Can I get you anything?" she asked kindly. Maria shook her head but smiled back. "Thank you." The flight attendant nodded and walked away, leaving Maria with a small feeling of comfort. As the delay continued, Maria noticed something else, small acts of kindness between strangers. A young man offered his extra blanket to an older woman who looked cold. Two passengers shared a box of snacks. A mother gently helped her child sleep. Maria watched all this and thought about how important kindness was in moments like these. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Michelle. "Stay strong. You are not alone." Maria smiled and replied, "Thank you. I'm holding on." Suddenly, a soft murmur rose from the back of the plane. The same middle-aged woman who had spoken earlier stood up again. "We should not allow anyone to be treated unfairly," she said clearly. "We are all human. We all deserve respect." Her voice was steady and strong. A few passengers clapped softly in agreement. Maria felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from gratitude. She realized that even strangers could make a difference. The plane was still delayed, but inside Maria felt a quiet power growing, a feeling that she was part of something bigger than herself. As the sun outside began to lower, painting the sky with orange and pink, Maria looked forward to landing in California. She thought about the new opportunities waiting for her, the challenges she had already overcome, the people who believed in her. She whispered again to herself, "I will not give up. I will keep going." The plane engines hummed steadily and the passengers settled in, sharing a quiet hope that soon they would be moving again. Maria closed her eyes once more, ready for whatever came next. The plane remained still on the runway, the sun now dipping lower, casting a soft golden glow across the cabin. Passengers grew quiet, many resting their heads on the seats trying to relax despite the delay. Maria sat by the window, her fingers tracing the edges of the armrest. Her heart felt heavy, but her spirit remained strong. She thought about the people she had met in the last few hours, the kind woman who had spoken up for her, the flight attendants who showed her small kindnesses, and even the passengers who had shared moments of compassion with one another. Those small acts reminded her that there was goodness in the world, even when things felt unfair. Maria sighed softly and turned her attention to the aisle. She noticed a young man a few rows ahead sitting alone. He looked nervous, fidgeting with the buttons on his jacket. Their eyes met for a moment, and he gave her a small, encouraging smile. Maria smiled back, grateful for the silent support. After a while, the flight attendant came by and asked if Maria would like some water or a snack. She politely declined, but thanked her warmly. The flight attendant lingered a moment longer. "If you want to talk or need anything, I'm here," she said softly. Maria nodded, feeling a bit comforted by the simple words. The young man from a few rows ahead stood up and walked towards Maria's seat. "Hi," he said quietly. "I'm Aaron." "Hi, Aaron," I'm Maria. Aaron smiled, but his eyes showed a hint of worry. I noticed you had a tough time earlier. I just wanted to say I'm sorry you went through that. Maria looked at him, surprised by his kindness. Thank you. It was hard, but I'm trying to stay strong. Aaron nodded. I know how it feels to be judged unfairly. It's not easy. Maria's curiosity grew. What happened to you? Aaron hesitated, then spoke softly. I'm on my way to a new job too. It's a fresh start for me, but I've faced a lot of challenges along the way. Maria listened closely, feeling a connection growing between them. We don't always get a smooth ride, Aaron said with a small laugh. But we have to keep moving, Maria smiled. Exactly. We can't let anything stop us. They talked quietly for a while, sharing stories of hope and struggle. Maria found comfort in Aaron's presence. It reminded her she was not alone on this journey. The plane's engines rumbled softly as the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are still working to resolve the issue. We will update you as soon as possible. Maria sighed but stayed calm. Aaron reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook. I write when I'm nervous, he explained. Helps me clear my head. Maria nodded. That's a good idea. Aaron smiled. Want to see what I wrote? Maria nodded and he handed her the notebook. She read a few lines. Sometimes the sky feels heavy and the path seems long, but hope is the wind beneath our wings, carrying us where we belong. Maria's eyes brightened. That's beautiful. Aaron grinned. Thanks, I write about dreams and fears. Maybe you should try. Maria took out her phone and opened a blank note. She began to type slowly. I am more than a seat on a plane, more than a number in a system. I am a story of hope and strength, a dream that will not be broken. She showed the lines to Aaron, who nodded approvingly. You've got talent, he said. Their conversation was interrupted by a gentle tap on Maria's shoulder. The flight attendant stood nearby. We have news, she said softly. The airport just cleared us for takeoff. Maria's heart leapt. Relief flooded through her. Aaron smiled. Looks like we're finally going. Maria stood and gathered her bag. Thank you, she said to Aaron, for talking with me. It helped. Anytime, Aaron replied. Good luck with everything, Maria. As the plane began to move toward the runway, Maria looked out the window. The sky was a deep orange, filled with promise. The engines grew louder, and the plane lifted smoothly into the air. Maria felt a lightness she hadn't known since the morning. She knew the road ahead might be difficult, but she had new hope, new strength, and maybe even a new friend. For the first time in a long time, Maria believed that anything was possible. The plane had finally left the clouds behind. The soft hum of the engines was steady now, and the bright sun poured through the windows, filling the cabin with a warm light. Maria sat back in her seat, a quiet smile on her face. For the first time that day, she felt truly peaceful. Her thoughts were full of possibilities. The city of her dreams was waiting for her somewhere below the clouds. California, with its endless opportunities, felt close now, almost within reach. Maria pulled out her notebook and began to write. Words came easily now, inspired by the journey she had already traveled. She wrote about hope, courage, and the strength that grew inside her even when things seemed unfair. As she wrote, she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. It was the same flight attendant who had been kind to her before. Would you like some tea? She asked with a smile. Maria nodded. Yes, please. Thank you. The flight attendant brought the warm cup and set it gently on the tray table. Good luck with everything, she said softly. Maria smiled in return. Thank you. Looking around the cabin, Maria noticed the people she had seen earlier. The woman who spoke up for her was now reading quietly. The man who had claimed her seat seemed calm, lost in his own thoughts. And Aaron, the young man she had met, was typing on his phone with a focused expression. Maria felt a sudden courage and decided to speak with him again. She stood and walked to his seat. Hi, Aaron, she said softly. He looked up and smiled. Maria, how are you feeling now? Better, she replied. Thank you for talking with me earlier. It really helped, Aaron nodded. I'm glad. Sometimes just talking makes all the difference. They sat together for a few moments, watching the clouds drift by. Then Maria said, I'm nervous about what will happen when I land. What if things don't go as planned? Aaron smiled kindly. It's normal to be nervous, but you're ready. You've already shown strength today. Maria took a deep breath. I hope so. Aaron reached into his bag and pulled out a small book. This helped me when I was nervous, he said. It's full of stories about people who faced challenges and didn't give up. Maria looked at the book's cover. It was titled Stories of Hope. Can I borrow it? She asked. Of course, Aaron said. Maria opened the book and read a story about a young woman who traveled far from home to study her dream. The woman faced many problems but never gave up. Maria smiled. This is inspiring. Aaron nodded. That's the idea. As the hours passed, the plane began to descend. The city lights appeared below, shining bright like a promise of new beginnings. Maria's heart beat faster. She looked out the window, watching as the airplane glided smoothly toward the runway. When the plane landed, the passengers applauded softly. Maria felt a deep joy inside her. The doors opened, and warm air greeted the travelers. Maria gathered her things, feeling excitement and hope growing stronger with every step. At the airport, she waited for her luggage. As she stood by the carousel, she saw Aaron nearby. I'll walk with you, he said kindly. Thank you, Maria replied. They walked together through the busy airport, filled with people moving in all directions. Outside, the city greeted them with a soft breeze and the sound of distant traffic. Maria looked up at the tall buildings and bright lights. This was her new home. She turned to Aaron. Thank you for being a friend today. Aaron smiled. We all need friends on new journeys. Maria nodded, feeling grateful. As they parted ways, Maria felt a new sense of confidence. She was ready to face whatever challenges came next. Because she had learned that kindness, courage, and hope were the strongest wings of all. Maria stood outside the airport, the cool evening air brushing gently against her face. The city lights stretched out before her like a sea of stars, glowing softly in the twilight. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey behind her and the excitement of the new path ahead. This was the moment she had dreamed of for so long. After the events of the day, the confusion, the waiting, the kindness of strangers, and finally the landing, Maria felt a sense of calm strength growing inside her. The challenges she faced today had tested her in ways she never expected. But now, as she looked toward the future, she knew she was ready. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A message from Michelle, her professor. Welcome to California. Remember, this is just the beginning. You are capable of amazing things. Maria smiled, typing back quickly. Thank you, Professor. I'm ready to start. Her thoughts wandered to the people who had helped her along the way. Aaron with his quiet encouragement, the flight attendant's kindness, the strangers who had shown support. She realized that none of this had to be faced alone. Maria made her way through the crowd, searching for the taxi stand. As she waited, she watched families reunite, friends hug, and travelers set off on new adventures. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out, Maria! She turned to see Aaron walking toward her, a friendly smile lighting up his face. I wanted to say goodbye, he said warmly. And good luck. Maria's eyes brightened. Thank you, Aaron, you made this day better. He nodded. Sometimes all we need is a little kindness. They stood for a moment, the city buzzing around them. Maria felt a new confidence settle over her. I'm going to make the most of this, she said softly. No matter what happens, Aaron smiled. I know you will. As the taxi arrived, Maria climbed in, her heart full of hope. The driver smiled kindly. First time in California? Maria nodded. Yes, I'm starting a new chapter. The city passed by in a blur of lights and colors. Tall buildings, busy streets, and glowing signs welcomed her to a place of opportunity. Maria thought about the job interview she had tomorrow, the new friends she hoped to make, and the dreams she was ready to chase. She reached into her bag and pulled out the notebook Aaron had given her. Opening it, she found the pages filled with stories of hope and strength, words that reminded her she was not alone in facing challenges. Maria smiled and added her own words to the last page. Today was hard, but I did not give up. Tomorrow is a new day, and I'm ready to rise. She closed the notebook gently, feeling a quiet pride. When the taxi stopped in front of her new apartment, Maria stepped out, carrying her bag and her dreams with her. The building was small but welcoming, with bright windows and a friendly door. Maria took the stairs two at a time, reaching the top floor. Inside her new home, the walls were empty, but to Maria, they felt full of promise. She placed her bag down and looked out the window at the city skyline. For a moment, the day's worries and fears melted away. Maria whispered to herself, "I belong here." That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about everything she had been through. She remembered the fear of being asked to leave the plane, the kindness of the strangers, and the strength she found within herself. Maria realized that life would have ups and downs, but she had the courage to face them. She closed her eyes and dreamed of the future, a future filled with hope, friendship, and endless possibility. The next morning, Maria woke early feeling ready. She dressed carefully, preparing for the interview that could change her life. As she left the apartment, she paused to look back one last time. The small space felt like a beginning, a place where she could build her future. Walking confidently down the street, Maria felt a new lightness in her step. She knew the road ahead might be challenging, but she was not afraid, because she carried with her the lessons of kindness, courage, and hope, and she knew that no matter what, she could rise. Maria smiled as she headed toward the bright city, ready to embrace all that life had to offer. Her story was just beginning.